Australia just got mugged on the global stage.
Australia has lost the hosting rights to COP31.
The United Nations Climate Conference will be held in Turkey.
They spent 3 years campaigning to host one of the most powerful climate summits in the world, COP31.
Finding holistic solutions is what the COP should be all about.
They had Pacific allies, diplomatic momentum, and the numbers, or so they thought. And yet somehow Turkey walked away with it.
I wonder if he's secretly hoping that Turkey does win. Secretly.
I think so. He is continually putting on a performance.
And the way this all went down, it says a lot about power, diplomacy, and possibly China.
Presented by Your Energy Answers.
COP sounds like somebody who'd give you a parking ticket, but it actually stands for Conference of the Parties, the annual UN climate summit where 200 countries fight over who cuts emissions, who pays for it, and how quickly the fossil fuel taps get turned off. But hosting a COP, that's a different game. The host nation doesn't just provide a venue and a few lanyards. They set the agenda, they chair the negotiations, they draft the final deal. That's the real power in the world of climate politics.
2015 history in Paris. The world commits to holding climate change to 2, ideally 1.5 degrees by 2050.
In 2026, it was this group's turn to host, the WEOG, Western Europe and others. That includes Australia and Turkey. But here's the catch. The host has to be picked by consensus, which means if even one country says, nah, the whole thing stalls. If no agreement is reached, the summit gets dumped by default to Germany. And with all the costs and their own cost of living crisis, they certainly don't want that. And Turkey knew it. So Australia's bid started in 2022. The pitch was pretty smart on paper. A Pacific COP hosted in Adelaide and co-designed with Pacific Island nations. It was a clever move. 1, it rebuilds Australia's climate reputation after years of fossil fuel expansion. 2, it cements ties with Pacific nations threatened by rising seas. 3, it pushes back on China's growing influence in the region. And 4, it shows off some of Australia's clean energy tech. After years of dodgy climate policy and fossil fuel expansion, this summit was their PR makeover, the big global rebrand, which is ambitious considering their track record. For 2 straight decades, they've been the guy at the climate table who delays, dodges, and drags things backwards.
You've got to reiterate quite a lot to the Australians what they need to be doing in the rules sometimes.
Whether it was bending the Kyoto rules, inflating baselines, or quietly voting against Pacific-led reforms.
Gas has an important role to play in the transition.
It's a clear attack on Pacific right to exist and Pacific values.
This time though, things look different. And to be fair, Australia had strong backing. Most of WEOG leaned their way. The Pacific Bloc lined up behind them. European countries made favourable noises. They looked like the front runner. South Australia was all in. Adelaide was branding itself the renewables capital. Business groups were frothing. And front and centre, Energy Minister Chris Bowen. But right up into the final week, he was publicly bullish, basically telling the world Australia had it sewn up. Reuters quoted him saying, Australia had the overwhelming support of the world to host, and that he was flying to Brazil to push hard for Adelaide. That confidence mattered because it set expectations inside Australia, inside WEOG, and especially across the Pacific. When you talk like you're already holding the trophy, the loss lands twice as hard. And Turkey's play? Sit still and block everything. Turkey also put in a bid back in 2022. But they didn't need to win over anyone. Under COP rules, all they had to do was refuse to budge. And that's what they did for 3 years. This wasn't new. Turkey had used this exact tactic before, holding out in past COP host fights until the UK gave them concessions. Australia's diplomats expected the same playbook. Let Turkey extract something, then step aside. But this time, Turkey didn't blink. And that changed everything. Fast forward to November 2025, COP30, Brazil. This was decision time. Chris Bowen was in Belém, still acting like Australia was in the lead, saying, we're not going anywhere. But then, back in Canberra, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese gives a public statement.
If Australia is not chosen, if Turkey is chosen, we wouldn't seek to veto.
Australia won't veto Turkey if they're chosen. This wasn't a fumble. It was a message. The timing couldn't have been worse. Australia had built expectations across the Pacific, across the UN, across its own domestic press. And suddenly, it was signalling retreat. And that raised a brutal question. Was this a collapse or a quiet exit strategy? The cost of hosting COP31 hit the headlines. 2 billion Australian dollars, not for climate action, just to host the thing. In the middle of a cost of living crisis, that's political poison.
Australia's dodged a bullet. That's money that will no longer be wasted on a giant talk fest where people whose emissions are very high will try and tell the rest of us that our emissions should be very low.
And then there's the internal politics. A COP summit on home soil would have been a huge win for Bowen. But he's from Labor's right, the PM from the left. There's history there. If the summit was turning into a political risk for Albanese and the biggest upside was Bowen's rising profile, the incentive to pull the plug grows. Eventually, a compromise lands. COP31 goes to Turkey. Chris Bowen gets a new role, President of Negotiations, plus a small pre-COP meeting in the Pacific. Turkey gets the global spotlight. Australia gets not much, and then Canberra tries to sell it as a win. That is classic political damage control.
What is happening here? Is Turkey pulling away from Europe and going more toward China?
One country had a lot to gain from Australia falling flat here, and you guessed it, China. Beijing has been quietly expanding influence across the Pacific through infrastructure, soft loans, security deals, and diplomacy. If Australia had hosted a Pacific-themed COP, it would have locked in a regional leadership role Beijing's been trying to undermine for years. And Turkey, they're strategic partners with China, especially through the Belt and Road Initiative.
Absolutely. I mean, the Belt Road Initiative is huge for Turkey, and whether it's the land route or it's the maritime route, Turkey figures very prominently in that because you can't really get from China to Europe without some way going through Turkey unless you want to go through Russia, which is a whole different route.
So here's the speculative leap, but one worth considering. Did China see value in a spoiler? And did Turkey get just enough behind-the-scenes support to keep saying no to Australia hosting COP31? There's no hard proof, but geopolitics doesn't usually leave fingerprints. The outcome, though, is crystal clear. Australia promised the Pacific the spotlight and turned up with a flickering torch. And China didn't have to do anything publicly. All they had to do was wait. The bigger picture, how power really works. This wasn't just a lost summit. It was a case study in how global diplomacy actually works. Australia thought it had the momentum. Turkey held the line. And the US never leaned in hard to back Australia. And when the price tag became toxic, domestic politics overruled foreign policy. The end result, a climate summit that Australia could have led, now being hosted by a country that blocked it for years. This is COP31, lost in slow motion. And Australia got outplayed. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. I know this video is a little bit different from the other ones that we've done, but please let us know if you'd like us to continue making this content. You might see a couple new faces on the channel in the future, coming up with topics just like this. I'm Brian, until next time.
Please support the channel by liking the video, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, and check out all our other videos. Want more energy answered? Visit yourenergyanswers.com for quality energy products, tools and calculators, and find your quality local installers. You're still here? I'll see you next time. Bye.